Hey guys, tonight we begin with the heat, not the dramatic sun-washed warmth of a postcard desert, but the relentless sweat-summoning kind that seeps into your sleep and robs you of even the illusion of comfort. You're in ancient Egypt now, female poor and already itchy before you've even opened your eyes. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're awake, but there's no snooze button here. You didn't choose to wake up. It's just that the air inside your hut has reached bread oven levels, and the flies buzzing at your face are making your eyelids twitch. You're lying on a straw mat. It's not soft. It's not even flat. A reed poked your hip 3 hours ago, and now you have a welt forming in the exact shape of last night's bad dream. The room smells of heat. And you might be thinking, how can heat have a smell? Oh, but it does, especially when it mixes with old sweat cooking smoke and the slow rotting of anything that couldn't be dried, smoked or salted fast enough. Your family is still asleep beside you, arranged like linen-wrapped sardines. You shift slightly, and your sister mumbles, then kicks you in the shin. Good morning. Outside, it's dawn, but that means something very different in ancient Egypt. The sky is already the color of a faded papyrus scroll, and the sun is staging a slow-motion ambush on your roof. The reeds and mud that make up your walls are doing their best to keep the heat out, but honestly, they're losing the battle. You can feel beads of sweat forming along your hairline like a crown you didn't ask for, and it's only getting started. You sit up slowly because you learned the hard way that getting up too fast after a night on a straw mat is like challenging the gods of spinal health to a duel. Your neck crackles. Your knees whisper threats. You stand barefoot on a packed dirt floor that's cool for now, but will feel like hot stone by midday. If you're lucky, there's a jug of water left from yesterday. If not, congratulations, your day just earned its first errand. You walk out of your hut into a world buzzing with flies, early chatter, and dust. Always dust. There's no such thing as clean here. There's just less visibly grimy. The breeze off the Nile is more of a rumor than a fact barely there, and carrying hints of fish-wet linen and a touch of livestock funk. But you breathe it in anyway, grateful for any air that isn't thick with inside stink. The village is waking up. You hear the sound of feet slapping against earth, the distant hee-haw of a very annoyed donkey, and the familiar clink of a pot someone's already dropped. The sun isn't high yet, but it's flexing. You shade your eyes with a hand that already feels gritty. Sand sweat and yesterday's work clings to you like a second less likable skin. Your one tunic is wrinkled, stained, and slightly damp in that way that says, I was hung to dry in the shade and failed. It's thin, not stylish thin, just threadbare. As you move, it catches a breeze and briefly flaps like a sail on a struggling boat. And no, there's no underwear. Not unless you count the rag you tuck strategically and pray doesn't betray you mid-step. You walk toward the neighbor's well, or maybe the communal jar stand. Water's precious, and fetching it is an art form. The jars are ceramic heavy, when full, and designed with zero consideration for ergonomic carrying. You balance one on your hip with the flair of someone who has done this since she could walk. And you have. As you return, a fly darts straight into your mouth. You spit, cough, and mutter something that would definitely offend a priest, but no one hears you. Or if they do, They pretend not to. That's morning etiquette here. There's no breakfast waiting. There might be last night's leftover bread, now dry enough to use as a weapon or beer, which is more like lukewarm cereal soup than any drink you'd recognize. Your stomach grumbles, but there's work to do before you earn even that. And while all this seems exhausting, and this is just the warm-up. The real heat will arrive in an hour, and when it does, the world becomes a slow roasting pan. Your feet will burn through your sandals if you have any. Your back will sweat through your tunic. Your scalp will itch under its sun-battered plait, and every muscle in your body will ache for a nap you'll never get. Oh, and there's one more thing. As a woman in ancient Egypt, your day isn't just long. It's prescribed. You have roles, expectations, gods watching your every step, and not a single scroll of papyrus that cares about your opinion. You're important, vital, even but invisible outside your duties. You're the one who holds the household together, raises the children, grinds the grain, weaves the linen, fetches the water, and still remembers which amulet wards off scorpion bites. There are scholars today who debate just how much agency women in your position actually had. Some say more than other ancient civilizations. Some say less. But you don't debate. You sweat. You work. You survive. And as the first wave of sun stings the back of your neck and the village comes alive with dust footsteps and shouting, you brace yourself for another day of everything. Because in ancient Egypt, that's what being a woman means, carrying the sun on your shoulders with no shade in sight. Your home is a work of practicality, not comfort. A low, rectangular structure made of sun-baked mud bricks and roofed with woven palm leaves or bundled reeds. It was built with the help of neighbors because community is everything out here, but the building itself never asked you what you wanted. It's hot, it's cramped, and it's shared in a way that obliterates any concept of personal space. You step inside again, carrying your full water jar, your arms already aching from the uneven weight. Inside, the air is still, stagnant, as if yesterday's breath never left, and the morning's already too thick to inhale comfortably. The walls are dusty from the last Compson wind, and you make a mental note to sweep again. Not that it'll stay clean. Dust here is eternal. You could seal this place shut, and somehow the sand would still find its way in like a nosy ant with no boundaries. The floor is hard-packed earth. Your family may have spread mats, or maybe old textiles to soften it, but they do little. Every movement in the house is audible, a shuffle, a sigh, the groan of your brother shifting in his sleep. You can tell exactly who's waking up by the rhythm of the rustling and the morning complaints. It's not just humans in here. In one corner, the family goat snorts in its sleep. You've named her mostly out of resignation. There's also a small clay pen where a chicken roosts, looking disapproving as always. In fact, that chicken may have more square footage than you do. She's perched next to your fire pit, which is really just a shallow stone circle where you cook, breathe smoke, and pretend it's clean enough to eat from. The house is one room. No doors. No walls. One roof. One space. One collective inhale and exhale from 6, maybe 7 living bodies, plus insects, mosquitoes, gnats, and the occasional scorpion that makes you jump out of your skin at night, slap your mat, and hope you hit it instead of your sleeping cousin. There's no chimney. The smoke from last night's fire still lingers, curling along the ceiling beams and stinging your eyes. You cough quietly. Everyone coughs. It's just part of life now. A constant tickle in the throat, a reminder that even air is a compromise in this household. You look toward the woven reed partition that separates your sleeping corner from the rest of the room, not for privacy, but to keep the goat from chewing your sandals again. It didn't work last time. The woven mat is still chewed through at the bottom. You think about repairing it, then remember that the next breeze will probably tear it down again anyway. There's a shelf, if you can call it that, a mud brick ledge where you keep the few things that aren't floor-worthy, your comb made from bone and always missing 2 teeth, a small bowl of dried dates, and a bit of blue faience jewelry your grandmother gave you. It's chipped, still beautiful. You touch it briefly, as if it remembers her for you. The cooking tools sit nearby, a rounded clay pot blackened from fire, a grinding stone still dusted with flour, and a flat plate for baking bread on the coals. The last loaf you made is half eaten, and you can already see a trail of ants claiming it. You sigh. Again. Your mother is up now. Her hair's tied with a strip of linen, her face tired, in a way that feels ancestral, like the fatigue passed down through generations. She doesn't speak yet, just nods and starts working. She lights the fire with dried dung and straw. The smoke blooms again, thick and white. You wipe your eyes. Everyone moves around each other with quiet efficiency. You pass by your younger brother, who's still curled under a thin wool cloth that smells like mildew and unspoken dreams. He stirs as you step over him. No one complains about the crowding anymore. You've all learned how to step duck and crouch like dancers in a never-ending performance. Even bathing happens in this space. There's a shallow basin by the door. You pour some water into it and use a cloth to sponge yourself off discreetly, silently, while your family politely pretends not to notice. The cloth is rough, your skin even rougher. You check your arms, new scratches, old insect bites, and the faint scar from where you burned yourself on the cooking stone 2 seasons ago. When it's your turn to eat, there's no table. You sit cross-legged by the fire pit, passing bowls and bread pieces by hand. Everyone eats from the same dishes. No plates, no utensils. You tear off a chunk of yesterday's bread, dip it into a bit of lentil mush, and chew. It's dry. It's flavorless. You eat anyway. Hunger doesn't ask for seasoning. Your uncle arrives. He's loud already, sweating through his tunic, already talking about some dispute at the grain storehouse. He's not technically part of your household, but that never stopped him from showing up at meal times. You smile politely. He grumbles about the neighbors. You nod as if you care. Outside, the day is warming fast. Inside the walls, trap the heat like a jealous god. You hear a baby start to cry, your cousin's daughter, barely 2 months old, and already familiar with the sound of frustration. Your cousin lifts her gently cooing, then shifts her onto one hip and starts kneading dough with the other hand. Everyone is multitasking, always. You go to the door and peek out. Dust, heat, buzzing flies. The village square, if you can call it that, is nothing more than a hard patch of dirt where people gather, argue trade news, and occasionally break out in a fistfight over irrigation schedules. You consider stepping outside, but then the wind picks up and tosses sand directly into your eye. You reconsider. Back inside, it's time to sweep. The floor, the corner, the stubborn pile of dust that always reappears under the shelf. You use a broom made of tied reeds. It works poorly, but looks determined. You push the dirt out the door and feel a small surge of victory until you realize you've just swept it into the water pot you carried earlier. Well, that's life. As noon approaches, you begin prepping for the next meal. You boil water, chop onions, mash garlic with a stone. The food is basic but nourishing. You know how to stretch ingredients. You've learned from generations of women who made meals from memory and muscle. And as you kneel by the fire, squinting against the smoke, a thought strikes you, not about the heat, not about the hunger, not even about the flies currently having a reunion on your ankle. No. It's about how this house, this sweltering shared smoky space, is the whole world for most women, you know. It's not just shelter. It's the center of life. It's also the limit of it. Outside, there are temples, palaces, markets, places where men speak and make decisions. Inside, there are tasks, duties, roles that rotate but never end. You love your family. You cherish your home. But some part of you, buried under routines and soot, wonders what else might have been written on your scroll if anyone had asked. You shake the thought away. The stew's boiling over. Time to stir. You carry the laundry bundle in one arm, the water jar in the other, and your dignity somewhere in between, probably hanging by a thread. The sun is already above the palm trees, now glaring at you like it's got a personal grudge. Your feet kick up fine dust with every step as you head toward the river, your village's eternal wash basin bathtub and sacred semi-toxic life source. This part of your day is not optional. If you want clean skin, clean clothes, or even just to not smell like roasted goat sweat, you go to the Nile. Everyone does. It's not glamorous. It's not refreshing. It's not a scene from some idealized painting where women gently splash their feet and sing in unison. It's hard work, awkward logistics, and more bugs than water lilies. You reach the riverbank and are immediately hit by the scent part. Fish, part mud, part decaying, who knows what. A crocodile carcass upstream. A cow's afterbirth from a nearby village. No one asks. No one wants to know. The water looks peaceful on the surface, but you know it lies. Beneath that gentle ripple are snakes, frogs, biting insects, and sometimes worse. You find your usual spot, a patch between two large stones, where the reeds haven't yet claimed full dominance. A neighbor waves. Another adjusts her tunic and squats to rinse a pot. A third is already halfway into the water, slapping her laundry against a rock with the vigor of someone working out a week's worth of frustration. You roll your shoulders and begin. First, the washcloth soaked in Nile water wrung out, then used to scrub your arms and neck. It's not a ritual. It's a survival tactic. The river water is murky and warm, stirred constantly by other bathers and the occasional livestock, because yes, this is also where goats and oxen drink and sometimes relieve themselves. Sanitation isn't a word anyone here knows, but the need for it. Oh, everyone feels it. You wash quickly, efficiently. You don't have soap, just sand and maybe crushed lotus petals if you're lucky, or leftover ash from yesterday's fire if you're practical. Ash stings your skin, but it gets the grime off, or at least some of it. You've long accepted that you're never fully clean. You're just less filthy for a few hours. Then comes the laundry. You bend over the river dunk, the clothes, scrub them against the stone, beat them flat, and try not to think about how the stone smells faintly, like old fish and regret. The linen shifts and wraps float on the water like pale ghosts before you reel them back in for the rinse. You wring them out one by one, arms trembling slightly. It's a full-body workout with zero gym benefits. As you work, you overhear nearby conversations, half gossip, half survival notes. Who's pregnant? Who's been cursed? Whose husband is drinking too much beer and not enough water? A woman 2 stones over mentions that her cousin's baby has the cough again, and another nods knowingly. everyone has the cough. It's not a question of if, just when it'll get worse. Occasionally, someone screams, usually just a fish brushing a leg or a floating leaf that looked suspicious in the sunlight. Once, it was a crocodile. That wasn't a good day. The village elder said it was an omen, though no one could agree if it was bad luck or a divine warning to build a better fence. You see movement out of the corner of your eye. A teenage boy loitering too long on the path near the water. You glare. He retreats. Men aren't banned from the river, of course. They come here too. But they're expected to do so quickly, with their eyes pointed firmly at the horizon, not at the women washing themselves in their linens with as much modesty as the reeds allow. Still, you learn to move in a way that shields yourself, bent posture, quick rinses, adjusting your tunic with one hand while balancing a dripping garment in the other. Privacy is an illusion here. You just learn to function despite it. And what of menstruation? Oh, yes. It comes like a thief in the night, usually when you're least prepared. There's no cotton, no pads, no comforting warmth of a microwavable heat pack. You have linen rags, reusable, uncomfortable, and not very absorbent. You rinse them here too, trying to time it when the river isn't crowded, hoping your sister distracts the others, while you scrub the crimson stains from cloth that will see more use before the month is out. Some days, you try not to think about how much of your life is soaked in water that's technically sacred and practically hazardous. The Nile is a goddess, yes, worshipped for giving life-feeding crops and sustaining trade. But for you, it's also where you scrape fish scales off your tunic, rinse flea bites, and wonder how many others before you have done the same with the same resigned expression. The scholars of today argue over the Nile's true cleanliness. Some suggest it was better back then. Others claim it was already tainted by runoff and rot. But you don't debate the facts. You just avoid swallowing it. You've seen what happens to children who drink too deeply. Fevers, cramps, sometimes death. The river gives life, but it does not promise health. When the clothes are washed, your arms soar your back on fire, and your skin lightly scoured by river grit, you lift the dripping bundles and begin the trudge back home. Each step squishes slightly wet feet in dusty sandals never quite dry out. You balance the water jar on your head, not because you want to, but because your hands are full. Your neck aches, but at least you've done it. For today, at least, you and your family will have something clean to wear. Sort of. The definition of clean is generous here. As you near the hut, you pause. The sun is directly overhead. Your shadow curls beneath you like a retreating snake. The heat presses down, unforgiving. Your tunic clings. Your hair damp from splashes, and sweat clings more. You smell like river mud, wild onions, and that indescribable Nile musk that stays with you no matter how many times you rinse. Still, there's a flicker of pride. You did it. Again. Like your mother did before you. Like your daughter will one day do. Because in this world, you don't live next to the Nile. You live by it. And it never lets you forget. Your stomach growls. Again. Loud enough that one of the neighbor's chickens gives you a sideways look as if offended by the noise. You're back from the river, half dried by the sun, half steamed by your own sweat, and you're hoping, just hoping, that breakfast today might be slightly less depressing than usual. Spoiler, it won't be. You duck back into the hut, juggling damp laundry, your water jar, and a mental to-do list long enough to wrap a mummy. The heat inside has risen while you were gone. It's now a full 5 degrees hotter than outside. and the scent of damp straw clay walls smoke, and general existence hits you like a dusty slap. You drop the laundry in the corner and head toward the cooking area where your mother is already squatting beside the fire pit, poking at something in a pot with the same weary motion she's used since you were old enough to remember. What is it? You ask, not really expecting an answer. She doesn't look up. Bread. Beer. Of course, you sit on the hard-packed floor legs, folded spine already protesting. Breakfast in ancient Egypt is not the breakfast of anyone's dreams. It's not even breakfast of someone's mediocre Tuesday. It's a tactical chew-and-survive operation. And as you watch your mother ladle out thick, lumpy beer porridge into shallow bowls, you realize with clarity you miss the concept of joy. The bowl is set in front of you. You stir it reluctantly with a finger. It's warm, vaguely sour, and dotted with grains of emmer wheat fermented barley, and bonus a tiny fly that did not survive the brewing process. You flick it away. Protein. You take a sip. Technically it's beer, but really it's just liquefied bread. No foam, no fizz, no flavor, except that tang of overripe grain and survival. This stuff has the consistency of pancake batter left in the sun for 3 days. And yet, it's the most nutritious thing you'll have today. It's also safer than water. The Nile is sacred, yes, but it also harbors every microbe known to ancient medicine. Brewing even this rudimentary kind helps boil out the parasites. Your body has adapted, sort of. Diarrhea is a constant companion, but it's familiar, like a distant cousin who visits too often. Beside the bowl is your bread. Dense, dark, flat. Baked last night on a stone, it has already hardened to the texture of a small brick. You knock on it once for good measure. It makes a sound. You consider using it as a weapon. You tear off a piece and chew. Tastes like burnt grain and responsibility. If you're lucky, there's a hint of salt. If you're really lucky, there's no sand. Today there's sand. Of course there is. The grinding stones are made from sandstone, and every loaf comes with a complimentary grit tooth massage. It's not flavor, it's texture. And not the fun kind. You chew slowly, jaw-aching tongue navigating the grainy battlefield inside your mouth. This is the part modern people often misunderstand. Ancient Egyptian bread wasn't fluffy or golden. It was functional, fuel, the cornerstone of existence. Your entire society is built around it, its storage, its production, its rationing. The wealthy eat cakes, sweetened with dates, and honey sprinkled with sesame or almonds. You don't. You eat what they wouldn't feed their dogs. Sometimes, if the gods are generous, or your neighbor is there, might be an onion, or garlic. Maybe even a dried fish. But not today. Today is just bread and beer. Again, your younger brother finishes his bowl and belches triumphantly. Your mother smacks him gently on the head. He grins. You roll your eyes. It's the most joyful moment of the morning. A fly lands on your bread. You flick it away. Another replaces it. It's a game you never win. There's a debate among scholars now. Some say that lower-class Egyptians were relatively well-nourished compared to their medieval counterparts. Others argue that constant exposure to grit led to early tooth loss, and the lack of variety stunted growth. You don't know the scholarly consensus. You just know your gums bleed when you chew too fast. You wipe your hands on your tunic, already stained, and pick up the last of the beer porridge. You swallow the last mouthful like a warrior taking a final gulp before battle. Because the next part of the day is work. And if you thought breakfast was disappointing, just wait for the tasks ahead. But for now, you sit, your back against the wall. the bowl still warm in your lap. You listen to the sounds of the household, the scrape of pots, the rustle of clothes drying in the doorway, the distant thump of someone dropping a bundle of reeds. You glance at the reed mat hanging above the door. It sways in the hot wind like a curtain to a world that never changes. And in that moment, chewing the last gritty crust of a life bread made by hands calloused from 1,000 mornings just like this one, you realize something. This isn't a temporary routine. This is your life. Bread and beer, sand and sweat, repetition without complaint. Because complaint doesn't fix anything. You sigh, stretch your aching back, and stack your bowl with the others. And like every woman before you, you prepare to face the day with your belly half full and your patience already thinning. The clothes you wore yesterday, you're wearing them again today and tomorrow. And probably until they quite literally fall off your body in a threadbare heap of exhaustion. Because here in ancient Egypt, your wardrobe is not curated, it's endured. You reach for your linen shift, now dry after its baptism in the Nile, and hold it up to the morning light filtering through the cracks in the hut's mud brick walls. It's a light tan color, not because it was dyed that way, but because linen starts white, and then gradually absorbs a palette of life dust, smoke oil, blood river silt, baby vomit, the works. You could probably carbon date it just by the smell. You slip it on. It's scratchy in places and whisper thin in others. You cinch it at the waist with a reed cord that frayed months ago. One tug too hard and the whole operation might unravel in public. That's a risk you take daily. And that's it. That's your outfit. There is no change of clothes. There's no drawer of backup tunics or box of seasonal fashion. You have this one garment, and maybe a slightly nicer version stashed away for temple visits or funerals. If you're from a slightly better off family, you might have 2 shifts. If you're a scribe's wife or a temple worker, maybe a colored sash. But for you, 1 shift. Always damp, never new. You duck outside, blinking into the sun. The village is stirring. Other women pass you wearing nearly identical linen outfits because that's the default. Your sandals, if you have them, are made from woven papyrus or palm fiber. They pinch flop and fall apart in about 2 weeks. You wear them only when you must, like market day or crossing particularly stony ground. Most of the time, you go barefoot. The soles of your feet are tough as pottery and just as cracked. Your skin, it's taken a beating. The sun is not gentle here. Your arms, neck and face are weathered, dry-lined, far beyond your years. You're 16 and look 28. You're 28 and look 40. You're 40, and no one believes you're still alive. The heat doesn't just tan you, it scorches. You've tried mud pastes, animal fats, and the occasional smear of crocodile dung for protection, but it's a losing battle. The sun always wins. Your hair is braided tightly today to keep it off your neck. You used water and a bit of castor oil to tame the frizz, but it still fuzzes at the edges like straw. You tuck it behind your ears and hope it holds. Lice are a constant threat, so you regularly shave parts of your scalp and rub on natron paste. It burns a little, which means it's working. Probably. You look at your hands. They're stained with everything: grain dust, river clay, animal hair, and heat blisters. Your fingernails are chipped, your knuckles dry and cracked. You rub some leftover lard into them when you can, but mostly you just ignore the sting. There's always more work coming. What about jewelry, you wonder? Technically, yes. The rich wear gold, faience beads, inlaid rings with symbols of protection, scarabs, ankhs, the eye of Horus. You have one chipped blue bead on a string of old twine worn around your neck since you were 8. It might have been protective once. Now it's just sentimental and maybe a little moldy. The scholars argue that Egyptian women had more rights than those in other ancient societies. You could own property, initiate divorce, even inherit land. But what they don't always say is that these rights often came wrapped in expectations, limitations, and a reality check. Being allowed to do something on papyrus isn't the same as being able to afford to do it in real life. You walk toward the open yard where your cousin is weaving cloth. Her shift is patched at the hip with a scrap of an older one. You admire her creativity. Patches are as close as you'll ever get to fashion. You sit beside her, joining in the morning chores. Together you start spinning flax fibers into thread fingers, twisting rhythmically, mind half awake. The silence is companionable, until she winces. Flea bite, you ask. No, just linen rash again. You nod. You both know that damp linen rubbing against unwashed skin creates chafing that feels like someone rubbed you down with desert thorns. You get used to it, or you stop complaining. Same thing, really. Children run by barefoot, shouting about nothing, kicking up clouds of dust that settle into your hair. You don't flinch. Dust is your constant companion. It lives in your clothing, under your nails, and in your ears. You sneeze dirt. You sweat mud. Occasionally, someone mentions perfume, Kaifi lotus oil, or myrrh, luxuries worn by temple dancers, priestesses, queens. You've smelled it once on a noblewoman who passed through the village during the last festival. It made the whole square smell like something divine. You almost wept. Your scent, slightly fermented sweat, and a hint of yesterday's fish oil. Your cousin laughs at something, maybe your face, maybe the absurdity of the work, and you both lean back, shoulders sore. The sun climbs higher. You wipe your forehead with the hem of your shift. It's already soaked. And still, there's no changing clothes. You'll wear this same outfit all through the afternoon, through more chores, through the evening fire and the night smoke. You'll sleep in it. You'll wake in it. Maybe you'll rinse it again tomorrow. Maybe not. Water takes effort, and you have so many other things to do. There are days when you envy the priestesses with their linen robes pressed and perfumed, their hair oiled and braided by someone else's hands. There are days when you wish you lived inside a mural, forever painted in perfect profile, untouched by dirt or sweat. But you're real. And real in ancient Egypt means repetition, means resilience. So you pull the cord tighter around your waist, tuck in the flap near your hip, and stand. The tunic isn't beautiful. It isn't comfortable, but it's yours. The sun is climbing, the heat intensifying, and you're already covered in a film of sweat and dust so fine it could be sold as exfoliant. You finish breakfast, or whatever approximation of it, passed for sustenance, and now you begin the part of your day that requires more effort than your body technically has in reserve. You start with the grind. Literally, you kneel beside the grindstone, a wide, flat slab of rock with another oblong stone perched on top. It's smooth from years, no generations of repetitive motion. This stone has been used by your mother, your grandmother, maybe even your great-grandmother before her. It is the hearthstone of labor, the centerpiece of female toil. And it doesn't care that your shoulders ache or your hands have gone numb. It only asks for more grain. You pour out the dried emmer wheat, measuring it by instinct, not weight. Then you begin. Push, pull, grind. Push, pull, grind. The upper stone drags across the grains, turning them slowly, painfully slowly, into coarse flour. Dust rises into your face, into your eyes, into your lungs. You cough, wipe your nose with the back of your wrist, and keep going. There are no breaks. The process takes hours. And it's not just flour you're making. You're making the next day's bread, the next offering, the next sense of order in a life where everything else is unpredictable. Floods, fevers, scorpions, all chaos. But this is something you can control. Push, pull, grind. The muscles in your arms burn. Your spine begins to hunch. Not metaphorically, actually. Generations of women will show signs of this work in their bones. Archaeologists will marvel at the curvature of your skeleton and say, "Ah, she ground grain," as if that captures it. You're not alone. Your sister's beside you, grinding lentils for a stew. Across the courtyard, your cousin mashes garlic with a stone, while your aunt beats laundry with the rhythm of someone trying to drown a very slow-moving snake. No one talks much during this time. You're focused. Or you're somewhere else, mentally drifting away on half-thoughts about whether the goats have escaped again, or if you'll have enough flour to trade for onions. The grind isn't just for food. Sometimes it's for beer. You prepare the grain differently, soak it, ferment it, and turn it into something halfway between drink and paste. But the grinding is the same. The demand never stops. In this society, your labor is the engine of everything you turn grain into flour into bread into life. Without you, things fall apart. Quietly, slowly, like a forgotten roof beam sagging under the weight of hot, humid years. Midway through, a breeze cuts through the courtyard. It carries the scent of smoke-wet linen and faintly, mercifully lotus flowers from someone's garden. You stop just for a moment, wipe your brow, shake out your hands. They're red-lined and trembling slightly. You stretch your fingers, then press them back to the stone. Push, pull, grind. Later, you shift tasks. You move to kneading dough, mixing in water with flour, adding a bit of last week's leaven, and pressing it into a sticky, uncooperative mass. The clay bowl wobbles. Your elbows stick to the edge. You feel the dough glue itself to your palms, and between your fingers, refusing to let go. It's stubborn, this dough. You admire that. You cover it with a cloth and let it sit in the corner. Then you begin the next thing. Because there's always a next thing. Today, it's pounding flax fibers to make thread. Tomorrow it might be twisting reeds for baskets, or brewing beer, or shaping clay oil jars, or hauling more water because someone broke the last jar. You don't get to specialize. You're not a grinder, or a weaver, or a brewer. You're all of it. Because you're a woman, and because no one else is going to do it if you stop. You hum to yourself as you work. A lullaby your mother used to sing when you were little. You barely remember the words, just the rhythm, the rise and fall of her voice as she ground grain with one hand and held you with the other. The song is older than memory, older than this courtyard, older than the dynasty. You wonder briefly if the goddess Isis ground grain. Probably not. But maybe some priestess once imagined her doing it. Maybe she blessed a household because a woman's flour turned out just right. Maybe not. There are amulets for the grindstone, tiny charms shaped like loaves carved from faience or bone, meant to bring good luck, good leavening protection from mold. You don't have one, but you whisper a quiet hope anyway, as you begin forming the loaves, flattening them, shaping them with quick, practiced hands. You stack them carefully by the oven, Really just a dome-shaped clay pit in the courtyard, already hot from the morning sun. You feed in bits of dried dung and straw. The flames flare. You squint into the smoke. The fire licks the loaves, hardens them, scars them just a little. You watch, wait, turn them with a stick. By now, the sweat has dried into a layer of floury salt on your arms and face. You lick your lips and taste it. It's not unpleasant, just familiar, like everything here. The bread finishes baking. You pull them from the coals, set them on a basket to cool. You inhale the scent. It's earthy, warm, solid. This is the scent of sustenance, of survival. It smells like your whole life shaped into a circle of dough and heat. And then because you still have time before the next task, you go back to the stone. You pick up the grain. You begin again. Push, pull, grind. The fire is already smoldering by the time you get to it again. A low, smoky thing crouching under a domed clay oven in the corner of the courtyard. Not the kind of fire that welcomes you with warmth, or the gentle crackle of comfort. No, this fire breathes out smoke like it's trying to choke you into submission, fed on dung cakes and straw bundles, always hungry, always smoky, always slightly threatening to blow sparks into your face. You crouch beside it, eyes already tearing up a ladle in one hand and a soot-blackened pot in the other. Cooking for you is a dance with dirt. It's about knowing when the heat is too strong, when the embers are dying, and when the smell of burning flour means you've just ruined tomorrow's rations. The fire doesn't wait, and it doesn't forgive. You're making stew today, or something like it. A murky, bubbling concoction of lentils, wild herbs, a few garlic cloves, and a crumbling cube of dried fish that smells like desperation. The pot hisses as you stir, and you feel the heat rising into your face, clinging to your skin like steam from the underworld. You blink through the smoke, trying not to cry, or cough, or both. The kitchen isn't a room. It's wherever the fire lives. For you that's here on packed earth, surrounded by broken jars, stained bowls, and hungry chickens waiting to pounce if anything edible falls. One of them tries. You hiss at it. It squawks and backs off. You're not in the mood today, chicken. Not today. There's ash everywhere. In your hair, on your forearms, probably in the stew. But ash, as it turns out, is flavor. Or at least filler. No one will complain because complaining gets you exactly 0 new ingredients. What's in the pot is what's in the pot. You might not even taste it before serving. The smoke has already numbed half your senses anyway. Above you, the sun slices through the courtyard like a blade. You reposition the pot so the flames lick the base, not the sides, and adjust the heat with a few precise movements. Poke the dung, shuffle the straw. Add a pebble to lift the pot slightly. It's not guesswork. It's lived experience. You've been watching the women in your family do this since you were old enough to stand. There's a scholar's debate about how advanced Egyptian cooking was. Some say it was basic. Some call it elegant in its simplicity. But what those scrolls don't tell you is what it feels like to sweat over a stew that will be eaten silently in 5 minutes, criticized for its lack of onions, and then immediately forgotten. You check the bread from earlier cooling nearby. The crust is crisp, the bottom slightly burnt. You scrape off the worst of the char with a bit of shell. You smile. That's as close as you get to presentation. Your little sister shows up. She's supposed to be helping. Instead, she grabs a piece of bread and runs off, laughing her dusty heels kicking up the fresh sweep of the courtyard. You don't bother yelling. She'll get hers later when she has to wash the bowls. Lunch, when it's ready, is simple stew. Bread may be a shared onion if you're lucky, and a cup of thick beer. Everyone gathers. Not around a table, there is no table. You sit in a circle on the ground, knees to chest bowls, and lap elbows, bumping as you pass around the food. The stew is ladled out. Everyone eats in silence, broken only by the sound of chewing the occasional belch and someone sucking their teeth at a missed fishbone. You eat last. Not because you're less important, but because you're the one serving. And in this house, that means you monitor the portions, make sure everyone gets enough, then scrape what's left from the bottom of the pot for yourself. It's mostly soft lentils and bits of burnt garlic stuck to the sides, but it's warm filling and tastes like something you've made with your own hands. That part at least feels good. After the meal, everyone stands. The bowls are scraped clean with fingers, licked even. You collect them all, and the washing begins. At the river, if you're lucky. But today, you rinse them in leftover water from the jar, scrubbing with sand, and a bit of plant fiber until the worst of the grease lifts. You set them out in the sun to dry. Then you wipe your hands on your tunic now, stained from 3 different sauces, 2 flavors of soot, and a mystery spill that you've chosen not to investigate. Dinner won't be any easier. In fact, it will likely be identical. More stew, more bread. The cycle continues. But sometimes, just sometimes, you get something special. A small bundle of dates, a few chickpeas from a neighbor, or dried lotus root boiled into something soft and strange, and a little sweet. You remember once, during a temple festival, someone gave you a honey cake, a real one, made with flour and fat and honey, and maybe even milk. You were 10. You still think about it. It was the best thing you've ever eaten. Nothing since has come close, and no, you don't expect to eat it again. That's not how this world works. You don't chase delicacies. You chase calories. After lunch, the fire dies down. You stir the ashes, rake the coals flat, and cover the pit. The clay oven smokes slightly as it cools. You gather the utensils, stack them, and store them back in the corner, where the rats sometimes chew them, but not always. You look around at the courtyard, charred pots, stained cloths, the fluttering reed door. Mat the haze of smoke still curling in the sunlight, like the aftertaste of labor. It's not glamorous. It's not fair. It's not even always enough. But it's yours. And you did it. Again, the sun hovers at its zenith, turning every flat surface into a skillet and every shadow into a refuge. You've done the morning chores, grinding, cooking, scrubbing, fending off chickens, and feeding half the household, but don't sit down yet. The afternoon work is waiting, and it involves 2 of your least favorite things: textiles and tangled family politics. You make your way toward the loom. It's not in a special room or tucked away in some breezy upper chamber. It's propped awkwardly against the outside wall of your hut, shaded by a reed screen that flaps like a lazy flag in the hot wind. The loom is vertical, made of wood, tall enough that you have to stand or crouch for hours. No cushion, no stool, no mercy. The warp threads hang like the curtain to a life you never auditioned for. Your job, weaving them into linen. Thin, light, easily ruined linen. Egypt is famous for it. People from other lands will marvel at the fineness of Egyptian linen for millennia, but no one marvels at the process, because the process is long, slow, and utterly brutal on your back. You kneel, check the threads. They're already fraying in places. The flax was second-rate, not properly retted. You roll your eyes and start anyway. The shuttle slips through. You beat the thread into place. Again, again, again. You hum something under your breath, a weaving rhythm, the kind passed down through mothers and aunts, not because it's beautiful, but because it helps keep your hands moving. In, out, beat, shift. In, out, beat, shift. It's not mindless work. If anything, it's demanding in that special way that traps your brain somewhere between monotony and panic. Miss a thread, and the whole piece is off. Drop the tension and the fabric bunches. Tug too hard, and you snap the warp line and spend the next hour retying it with fingers that feel like bruised reeds themselves. Your cousin joins you with another bundle of flax. She's muttering to herself about her mother-in-law again. Apparently, the old woman made a comment about the coarseness of her weaving. You offer a sympathetic grunt. That's how it goes. Older women criticize younger ones. Younger women complain in whispers. The flax gets woven anyway. You're not just making cloth for clothes. Some of this will go to the temple as offerings, some to the market, some to your own family if there's anything left. You're required unspoken, but expected to be fast, neat, and efficient. If you're lucky, the priest overseeing the temple cloth won't dock your share for uneven edges. The string digs into your fingers. The sun has shifted, and now your shoulders are baking again. You wrap a strip of cloth around your head to keep the sweat out of your eyes. It helps. A little. And then you hear the creak of someone approaching. You glance up and immediately regret it. It's your uncle. Again, he's holding a broken fishing net, and that expression that means I'm about to ask you to do something that will ruin your day. Sure enough, he drops the net in front of you. Can you fix this before sunset? You blink. Uncle? I'm weaving cloth for the offering. He waves a hand. That's tomorrow? This net needs mending. We need fish. You open your mouth, but there's no real argument. Fish means food. The net means work. And you mean availability. He leaves before you can answer. Your cousin snorts. Men, she mutters. You roll up your linen, set it aside, and pull the net toward you. The holes are many. The cords are tangled. The smellfish mildew. Swamp water and resignation. You begin to knot. And now you're doing two kinds of thread work, the fine, sacred kind that makes priests nod in approval, and the rough, oily kind that determines whether your dinner will include protein or just more bread. That's how it goes. Your hands move between the divine and the disgusting without pause. One moment, you're weaving offerings for the gods. The next, you're scraping fish guts out of a net that's been soaking since last flood season. This isn't an exception. It's the norm. And still, as your fingers move, twist, pull, knot, tighten, you feel something you wouldn't admit out loud. Pride. Because this too is skill, knowledge passed down, strength you earned. Your mother once said that a woman's work in Egypt is like the Nile, sometimes dry, sometimes overflowing, but always there. By late afternoon, the net is repaired, the cloth is half woven, and your back feels like it's been worked over with a brick. You lean against the wall, letting your arms hang, muscles twitching. The sun finally begins to lower, casting long shadows that make your courtyard look wider than it is. You look down at your hands, scraped dirty, calloused steady. They've woven linen fine enough for burial shrouds. They've mended nets that feed whole households. They've ground grain, kneaded dough, braided hair, soothed crying babies, and stirred stews so thick they could double as bricks. They're tired hands, but they know what they're doing. You feel it before the first drop. That deep, dragging ache in your belly. Not sharp, not even dramatic, just heavy. A weight that presses down from the inside out, spreading through your hips, your lower back, and down your thighs like a message written in heat and dull knives. You don't need a calendar. Your body keeps its own count, and today's inked in red. You let out a small breath. Not a sigh, exactly more like surrender, because you already know what's coming. You step away from the loom, your stomach cramping beneath your linen shift, and head toward the corner of the house where the women keep what they call the rags. A cloth-wrapped bundle tucked away under a broken jar behind a pile of spare reeds. It smells faintly of earth and old blood, and as you untie the knot, you see them strips of linen stained from use, stiff from the last washing. Still slightly damp. Always slightly damp. There are no pads, no cotton, no string-tied comfort, no soft wrappers or secret disposal bins. There's linen, coarse, scratchy, absorbent enough if folded 4 or 5 times. You take a few strips, fold them into a wad, and tuck them between your legs, adjusting the shift to hold them in place. It's not comfortable. It's not secure. And if you move too much or sit too hard, you'll feel that telltale warmth followed by the slow sinking horror of knowing you've just bled through onto your only outfit. You brace yourself and step back out into the sun. No one says anything. Not your mother, who glances at you with quiet understanding. Not your sister, who's pretending not to notice the way you're walking slower. Not your aunt, who simply hands you a handful of crushed mint leaves and says, "Brew this later." It won't help, but the gesture means something. In ancient Egypt, menstruation isn't hidden, it's known, talked about even. There are goddesses of fertility, of childbirth, of blood and protection. Isis, Hathor, Taweret. You've seen amulets shaped like hips and wombs and lionesses. There's magic in bleeding, they say. Power in cycles. A connection to the divine. But that doesn't make it easier. You still have to work. There are no rest days, no warm baths, or quiet retreats with tea and a blanket. There's grinding, cooking, scrubbing, carrying, and every motion sends a little stab of discomfort up your spine. You clutch your belly when no one's looking. Lean against the grinding stone a little longer than usual. Try not to grimace when you squat to stoke the fire. Every movement reminds you your uterus is currently trying to evict itself. There are remedies, of course. Some women chew herbs, mint, coriander, hibiscus. Others tie protective charms around their waists or rub crocodile fat over their bellies. You once heard of a midwife who swore by pressing warm bread to the abdomen. You tried it. It made you hungry. This month, it's not too bad. You've had worse. Last spring, you fainted by the loom from pain. Your sister carried you into the shade, and you lay there, sweating, writhing, while your mother placed cool river stones along your spine and muttered old prayers to Wadjet. But today, it's manageable. You just feel slower, duller, like the edges of your world have gone slightly soft and unfocused. There's a scholar's theory that ancient Egyptian women bled less than modern ones, fewer periods, due to constant pregnancies and breastfeeding. Maybe, but you're not pregnant. You're not nursing. And you're certainly not in a position to spend your cycles lying on cool stone floors sipping lotus tea. You still have to haul water, still have to sweep, still have to chase the neighbor's goat out of the garden again when it slips past the fence. You yell at it, then wince at the effort. The cramp flares. You double over briefly. The goat escapes anyway. By midday, the linen wad has soaked through. You walk carefully each step, a risk, each movement a wager with gravity and cotton's very distant cousin. You head back to the corner, switch out the cloth, rinse the used ones in a shallow bowl of water, wring them out, and drape them in the sun behind the house where no one walks. They'll be dry in an hour, and then they'll be used again. Your little brother sees the drying cloths and makes a face. Blood, rags, he says, teasing. You hurl a pebble at him without comment. He yelps and runs. The pain dulls as the day goes on. Not gone, just tucked into the edges of your mind. You stir the stew more slowly. You squat more gently. You sit with one leg tucked under, adjusting the pressure. And then it happens. One of the older women visiting from a neighboring house leans in and whispers that she has a special remedy. A salve made of date resin honey, and a few things she won't name. You nod politely, accept the small clay jar she offers, and try it that night. It smells like the underside of a swamp log, but it numbs the ache just enough. You lie down on your mat at the end of the day, eyes half-lidded, stomach sore. The cloth between your legs is damp again, but the bleeding has slowed. You feel the familiar exhaustion, not just physical, but bone deep, as if your body spent the day doing something behind your back and now expects you to clean up the mess. You think about the goddess Menhit, the lioness of blood, or maybe Sekhmet, all fury and flame. You wonder if they bled, if they ever had to grind grain while feeling like their guts were unraveling. Probably not. But maybe someone imagined they did. Maybe that's what keeps you going, believing that your pain has a place in the divine story, even if it's hidden in footnotes. The linen cloths dry by the wall. The cramps dull into the background. Your mother snores lightly on the other mat. The coals are almost out. You curl onto your side, tuck a hand under your belly, and close your eyes. It will come again next month, and the month after that. But so will you. You're 13, and today you're getting married. You woke up not to birdsong or sunbeams, but to the quiet hum of voices outside the hut, your mother whispering to your aunt, your father clearing his throat more than usual, the neighbor woman offering up a basket of barley as a gift. Not for you. For him, your future husband. You don't remember agreeing to this, but here it is. There was no long courtship, no secret love letters slipped through gaps in the wall, no giggling with girlfriends under the stars about how handsome he was. You met him twice. He's 32, a widower. He has 2 sons, already both younger than you. His name is Jehudamos, which means born of Thoth. But your cousin calls him Jehu the Bald when no one's listening. You were told last week. Told, not asked. Your father said, it's a good match. He has land. Your mother nodded. You're lucky, she said. He didn't want a virgin. You didn't know what to say to that. Now you sit on a reed mat, wearing your cleanest linen, recently bleached, sun-dried, and patched at the hem. A string of blue faience beads circles your neck. They belong to your grandmother, who also married at 13. She died giving birth to her 4th child. You try not to think about that. The wedding isn't a festival. No parades. No grand procession with dancers and flower petals. Just a legal arrangement. A few spoken words. A contract scratched onto papyrus with ink made from soot and gum. Your name. His name. A list of goods. A cow some in a small piece of land near the canal. A little silver promised if you're ever divorced. You can read it. That's rare. Your father taught you letters. He said they were a gift. You're not sure it feels like one today. A priest blesses the union, murmuring to the gods to watch over your home. The gods are always watching. Whether they do anything is another matter. You feel their painted eyes staring from the little shrine in the corner. Hathor for love, Isis for protection, Bes for fertility. You wonder which one is listening. After the contract is signed, he takes your hand. His is dry, thick with calluses, not unkind, just practical, like everything else about him. He nods, says you'll get used to it. You walk together toward his house, a little farther from the village center, slightly larger than your father's. There are 3 rooms instead of 2. A small granary, a goat tied out back. It's quiet. He opens the door for you. You duck inside. The air smells like barley and burnt garlic. His sons stare at you with wide eyes. You're barely taller than the older one. You manage a small smile. They look away. He shows you where you'll sleep. Not in a separate room, just a space in the corner behind a mat curtain, a woven basket for your clothes, a low table for grinding, a mat for sleeping. You fold your hands and say nothing. Later, your mother visits. She helps set up your space. She brings your cooking pot and the broom you made. She gives you a small clay oil lamp with a chipped rim. You hug her. She holds you too tightly. You'll be fine, she whispers. Did you cry, you ask? She pauses. Only once? That night, he lies beside you. It's not romantic, not violent either, just expected. A necessary ritual. You close your eyes and think of bread rising of the sound grain, makes under stone, something steady, something neutral. You learn to breathe through discomfort. That at least is familiar. In the morning, you wake earlier than him. You rise, sweep the courtyard, stir the ashes of his hearth. You make beer with his leftover grain, bake bread in his oven, feed his goat with your hands. You greet his sons, coaxing smiles. You begin again. There are quiet days, and difficult ones. He is not cruel, but not gentle either. He provides. You clean. He eats. You serve. When he speaks, you listen. When you speak, he usually doesn't answer. That you learn is as close to peace as some marriages get. Some say Egyptian women had freedom, that they could own property, that they could divorce. And yes, that's true on paper. But the paper doesn't cook dinner or patch tunics or raise children. The paper doesn't decide whether a girl eats first or last, or whether her opinion matters. And you are learning to live between the lines. By your second month, you know the rhythm of his house. When he wants quiet, when he wants food, when he wants you learn not to flinch. You learn to smile at the neighbors. You learn to laugh genuinely sometimes. His sons are funny when they aren't being pests. One night, he gives you a necklace. Not gold. Just beads, old ones, likely traded from some forgotten merchant stall. But they shine in the lamplight. You say thank you. He nods. Says nothing more. You wear them the next day. The neighbors notice. One smiles. Another smirks. You say nothing. You keep sweeping. Months pass. You bleed. You don't. 1 month becomes 2. You feel the change in your belly. You don't tell anyone not yet, but your body already knows. And you're 13. You're married. You're going to be a mother. The rooster crows while it's still dark. That rude, feathered alarm clock with a voice like sandpaper and bad intentions. You roll over, not because you're tired, though you are, but because your back aches from sleeping on a mat that's thinner than a palm frond. Your hips hurt. Your ankles, too. You're barely a few months into your first pregnancy, and your whole body already feels like it's auditioning for a tragedy. The house is silent. For now. You know it won't last. You move slowly, trying not to wake the boys. The eldest kicks in his sleep. The younger one whimpers quietly curled into a tight ball under his reed blanket. You wrap your shawl around your shoulders and start the day. There is no such thing as just being a wife in ancient Egypt, or just a mother, or just anything. You are all roles at once. Worker, healer, cook, brewer, disciplinarian, priestess. You don't get to pick one. You don't even get to do one at a time. It's a buffet of labor, and you're both the chef and the main course. You stoke the coals. There's no flame left from the night before, so you blow gently eyes, smarting mouth tasting of ash. You add fresh dung, a twist of straw. It catches finally, and you feed it slowly, listening for that familiar crackle that says yes, your fire still obeys you. You grind grain with slow, tired arms. It's harder now. Your back won't bend like it used to. Your breasts ache with every motion. But the dough must be kneaded. The bread must rise. The household must eat. You brew beer not the fun kind. Not that anyone around here knows fun beer anyway. This is thick, almost chewy, meant for nourishment. Barley water and old bread mashed and left to ferment just enough to kill the worst bacteria. You strain it through reeds, stir it with a paddle, and pour it into the same pots you'll scrub tonight with river sand and your own exhausted fingertips. When the boys wake, they complain about the bread crust. You smile, remind them gently to eat. When your husband wakes, he grunts. You hand him his meal. He eats in silence. He leaves for the fields without a word. And then your real work begins. There's laundry to do. At the river. Again. You haul the heavy basket belly, straining against the weight, and walk the path worn deep by thousands of bare feet. At the bank, other women are already scrubbing, slapping wet linen against rocks like they're punishing it for bad behavior. You join them. The water is cold. Your hands go numb. Your belly cramps. You wash. You wring. You rinse. You repeat. Someone nearby mentions her cousin's birth last week, twins, she says. One lived. One didn't. You nod, unsure what to say. Life is a coin toss here. You know it. She knows it. The river knows it. You hang the wet linen over low branches, tucking the corners so the wind doesn't snatch them. You walk back slowly, the sun rising behind you. Your skin already slick with sweat and river spray. Your ankles swell before noon. You rest only when you think no one is watching. Then it's weaving, or sewing, or fetching, or mending, or cleaning, or all five in a rotating dance of obligation. Sometimes you sit to shape jars, slow work smoothing the clay coils, keeping the form even. Sometimes it's basketry fingers numb from the tight weave. Sometimes you're called to help with a birth, to crush herbs, for a poultice, to whisper the words your mother once whispered when a child burned with fever. You are needed, constantly, and not always gently. One of your neighbors is sick. Her husband asks if you'll bring soup. You do. Another needs help with her loom. Her toddler is teething, shrieking, chewing everything like a miniature crocodile. You hold him while she knots threads. When you return home, your husband is back. His tunic is dirty. He hands you a fish. You thank him, prepare it. He eats, says nothing about the flavor. You clean, say nothing about your day. That's the rhythm. Some days he smiles. Some days he's quiet. Some days he complains about the boys, about the fields, about the priests, and their endless taxes. You not offer him more beer and file the words away. Not because they matter, but because you must remember the texture of his moods. You tuck the boys in. They're warm, sweaty, twitching in sleep. You wipe their foreheads. You remember being younger than them and feeling just as small. You think of the baby inside you, still invisible, but already changing everything. You lie down. Your joints throb. Your head hums. Your belly pulses with small electric aches. You do the math. You've worked 14 hours. You've sat down 5 times. You've eaten 2 meals. You've smiled 36 times you counted today. You've spoken more to chickens than to adults. And yet, you've done it. You were everything today, and tomorrow you will be again. It begins at dawn, like most things in your world, with a pain you cannot name and cannot run from. A deep, twisting ache that feels like the Nile itself is trying to pull your spine downward through the floor. Your hands shake. Your belly is tight. Too tight. The baby is coming. You were told how it would be, but not like this. Not with this much fear. Not with this much silence in the hut as your husband gathers the neighbor women and says nothing except, "It's time. You are not alone." That's the one mercy. Your mother arrives first, her face lined with worry and calm. Then your aunt. Then the village midwife, older than everyone, hands like leather voice, like a cracked reed pipe. She nods at you. You nod back. You lie on the floor, a mat under you, a pot of warm water near your feet. You are naked now, your linen shift folded neatly and placed aside, as if that matters. The contractions come in waves. Your whole body stiffens, then shudders, then drops into a brief calm. And just when you think it might end, it begins again. The pain claws through you, tearing breath from your throat, pushing words into your mouth that you don't have strength to say. Your mother grips your hand. Your aunt wipes your face with a damp cloth. The midwife kneels between your legs, muttering things you don't quite hear, invocations to Taweret, the hippo goddess of childbirth. Protection, strength, a safe passage for the child. They bring in a carved figure, best the squat, lion face protector of women in labor. His wide eyes stare at you. You stare back. Time bends. You lose count of the contractions, the sweating, the screaming, the hours. You vomit once. Your mother cleans it without a word. You beg for it to stop. No one answers. There's a long moment when you think you might die. Not because the pain is unbearable, though it is, but because something inside you shifts, and suddenly you're not on the mat anymore. You're floating above it, your body a distant shape, your breath coming from someone else's lungs. You hear the midwife say, "Now." You bear down. You push. The pain becomes fire. You scream. You push again. And then a wail, not yours, smaller, sharper, alive. The sound snaps the world back into place. Your body collapses spent. You feel the warmth between your legs, the slick mess of birth, blood, fluids, movement, and then a weight on your chest. A baby. Yours. Red. Wrinkled. Covered in everything and nothing. You stare at it. It stares back. You think it has your eyes. You think it survived. You think so did I. Someone cuts the cord. Someone else presses herbs into your hands to chew to slow the bleeding. You obey, without thought. The taste is bitter, metallic, real. The midwife presses your belly. You grunt in pain. The afterbirth slides out. More blood. Your mother doesn't flinch. Neither do you. You are a mother now. It doesn't feel grand. It doesn't feel sacred. It feels like surviving something no one else could see. Later, the midwife examines the baby, declares it healthy. A girl. She smiles. Strong lungs, she says. You don't know what to feel. Joy, fear, both. You sleep finally curled around your daughter, like a shell around a pearl. The next day, your husband visits. He says little, just looks, then nods. She'll be useful. You don't answer. You name her quietly under your breath. A name for protection. A name from the old stories. A name you hope she can carry through all the storms you already see forming on the horizon of her life. You breastfeed her. It hurts. Your nipples crack. Your back seizes up. But she drinks. And she sleeps. And she is real. And so are you. The women bring gifts, bread cloth beads. One woman whispers an old charm for sleep into your baby's ear. Another braids a thread into her tiny wrist. You watch them all. You watch your daughter. And you wonder what the world will be like when she is 13. Your daughter is 3 now. She runs barefoot through the courtyard, shrieking with joy as she chases a chicken twice her size. Her hair is a nest of knots and dust. Her face is smeared with something you can't identify, possibly stew, possibly dung. You don't ask. You've learned to pick your battles. You call her name sharp, but not angry. She stops, giggles, and darts behind the doorframe. You sigh, wiping your hands on your tunic. You're trying to cook or clean or sew something productive, but motherhood has no pause button, especially not in ancient Egypt. Childcare isn't a separate task here. It's background noise. It's the constant thrum beneath your every motion. You cook while holding a squirming body on one hip. You weave with one eye on the doorway, listening for crying or sudden terrifying silence. You grind grain with a toddler on your back, tied there with a strip of linen sweating against your spine. It's relentless. But it's also expected. Children aren't coddled. They're carried, fed, occasionally washed, but no one's making scrapbooks or journaling milestones. If they survive their 5th birthday, it's a miracle. If they do it without parasites or scarring, even better. You remember your own childhood bare feet, cold nights, calloused hands. By age 6, it wasn't cruel. It was just the shape of things. You knew how to find your place in line and how to get out of the way when the adults were working. Now, your daughter follows you everywhere, her little shadow. She copies your motions, tries to grind with her own tiny stone mimics, stirring the pot, even babbles blessings over the bread. You smile sometimes, but you also worry. What will her role be? Who will she marry? Will she reach the age where her womb matters more than her words? Scholars sometimes call ancient Egyptian childhood privileged for its time. They point to toys carved hippos, clay dolls, little wooden boats. And yes, your daughter has one, a doll your aunt carved from driftwood, its head vaguely shaped like a cat. But toys don't mean safety. And a good day is won without injury, disease, or grief. Your daughter cries one morning. A strange rash has bloomed along her chest. You recognize it, heat rash, probably. But it could be worse. There's always worse. You press a poultice of crushed mint and oil to her skin. It helps. She squirms, but doesn't protest much. You hum to her an old tune about the Nile bringing life. She dozes in your lap, warm and damp, her breath tickling your arm. Later, you see a neighbor carrying her child, limp, feverish eyes rolling back. She rushes to the temple. The priests might help, or not. If the gods are listening, if the gods care, you hold your daughter tighter that night. You don't pray loudly, just silently, to anyone. Best protector of children, Taweret, Isis. Whoever's listening, when she wakes, the rash is better. You exhale, not in relief, just in survival. Your son is born the next year. This time it's faster. You knew what to expect. The birth is smoother, the recovery quicker. You name him with care, a name meant to invoke strength and longevity. The midwife nods. He has a strong grip, she says. 2 children now, twice the work, double the danger. And yet they laugh. They laugh more than you did. Maybe that means something. You make them toys, flax dolls, hollow reeds that whistle small animals molded from mud and left to dry in the sun. They play in the dust and the laundry and the food. You scold, you sweep, you smile. One day, your daughter asks where the sun goes at night. You tell her about Ra's journey through the underworld, fighting off chaos to rise again. She listens wide-eyed. Later, she repeats it to the neighbor's goat. Education isn't formal, but it exists. You teach her to count with pebbles, to recognize her name in hieratic script. Your son gnaws on the charcoal stick while she practices. She's 5 now. He's 2. You're older. Your hands are rougher. Your eyes lined. But your house is full. The work hasn't lessened. If anything, it's more. But the laughter comes easier. The meals taste brighter. Even the stew, which is still mostly lentils and hope. Motherhood here is not soft, but it is yours. The flood is late this year. You stand at the edge of the village, staring at the cracked riverbed like it's a guest who promised to arrive hours ago and still hasn't shown up. The Nile, the great mother, the lifeblood of the land, is supposed to rise, now spilling over its banks, saturating the fields, painting the earth in silt and promise. But instead, it's shallow, tired, pouting in its banks, like a child refusing to perform. Your husband says nothing, just watches the horizon. He's done the math, run his fingers through the dusty irrigation ditches, muttered about the gods. Everyone has. The fields look hungry. The air tastes like uncertainty. Flood season isn't just a calendar event. It's a line between survival and starvation. If the waters don't come, the crops don't grow. If the crops don't grow, people start trading jewelry for grain, then linen, then livestock, then whatever's left. And if the gods are particularly cruel, even that won't be enough. You remember last time this happened, the year your daughter turned 1. The flood came late and weak, just enough to fake a promise, not enough to fulfill it. You watched your husband hollow-eyed over half-empty granaries. You watched your mother barter away her last beads for a basket of barley. You watched people eat the grain meant for planting and lie about it afterward. This year, everyone says it'll be better, but no one sounds convinced. The priests are performing rituals now, bigger ones, louder, more smoke, more feathers. You catch glimpses of them on the temple steps. Hands raised, eyes rolled skyward, chanting to Hapi and Osiris and whoever else might be listening. You don't go to the temple yourself. Your husband does, but you hear about it. The incense, the hymns, the prayers pressed into the walls. Meanwhile, you prepare, because whether the gods listen or not, the water jars must still be filled. The grain must still be protected, and the children must still eat. You begin drying everything: onions, beans, bread, even strips of fish. You salt what you can. Bury jars beneath the house floor. You trade for extra oil. You hide your extra cloth. You're not alone. Every woman in the village is doing the same. Silently, methodically, preparing for a drought without saying the word aloud. Because to name it is to summon it. The days grow hotter, dustier. The wind shifts, bringing not moisture, but grit, fine and cutting like powdered stone. Your skin stings. Your eyes itch. The children cough at night. Your daughter asks why the Nile is shrinking. You explain the myth again, that Ra journeys through the underworld, and sometimes the demons hold him back. She nods solemn, as if this makes perfect sense. Then she leaves an offering, her little carved cat doll, beside the stream. Just in case. The priest tells your husband the gods demand more devotion, more offerings, more purity. So you wash everything. Again. Clothes, mats, cooking pots. You even bathe in the river, despite the stink, despite the rumors that something dead is trapped upstream. It doesn't help. The river drops another finger's width. And now people are worried. Not openly, but you can hear it in the way the bread is stretched thinner, in how the neighbors start checking each other's grain jars, in the way your cousin looks at your son and mutters, "He's still plump." You keep your children close. That week, the temple announces a fast, just 3 days, a sign of humility, of reverence. But you know it's not about reverence. It's about rationing. You pretend your family participates. But you give your daughter a handful of soaked lentils under the mat, and your son drinks beer that's more porridge than liquid. You lose weight. Everyone does. But no one mentions it. You just wear your belts tighter, tie your sashes higher, pretend you meant to cinch the tunic like that. By now the Nile is nearly gone. What's left is brown and sluggish, winding between dry banks like a dying snake. The crocodiles are gone. The birds, too. Only the flies remain thriving in the rot. People whisper about the gods being angry, about sins, about broken oaths and forgotten funerals. One man sacrifices a goat. A woman throws a clay jar into the river and weeps. Your husband tells you to prepare for lean months. You nod, but you already have. The dried beans, the salted fish, the stored grain. It's not much, but it's more than some. One evening your daughter tugs your tunic. "Mama," she says, "will the Nile come back?" You pause. Then you kneel beside her and say the only thing you can say. Yes. Because you have to believe it, or at least pretend. That night you dream of rain, of heavy skies and swollen rivers, of frogs and fish and mud between your toes. You wake to silence. Still no water. Still no flood. But the jar of grain is full. For now. The famine doesn't arrive like a sandstorm or a flood. It doesn't roar through your life all at once. It seeps in, quiet, patient, like the trickle of water that once fed your fields, now gone. You barely notice the first signs. A missed meal, a portion halved, bread stretched with sand to make it last longer, crunching between your teeth with every bite. You say nothing at first, because everyone else is doing the same. Your neighbors stop greeting each other with smiles. They count each other's goats instead. The marketplace shrinks. Fewer baskets. Fewer traders. The onion seller stops coming entirely. The priest accepts offerings in silence now, even if it's just 2 shriveled figs and a smear of honey. You ration carefully. The dried beans you saved taste like dust, but they fill the stomach. The salted fish lasts longer than you expected. Your bread is thinner, flatter, baked on embers without the usual care. But still, your children eat. For now, you give them your share sometimes, not always. You can't afford that. You start to chew slowly, letting food linger in your mouth, fooling your belly into thinking it's had more. There's a saying, when the Nile is low, the gods test us. But it doesn't feel like a test. It feels like abandonment. People begin trading things they swore they never would. Jewelry, tools, heirlooms. One woman sells her wedding necklace. Another offers her husband's scribe kit still with ink stains, still smelling faintly of cedar. You see your cousin trade her last tunic for a basket of cracked barley. She walks home wrapped in a mat, and then people begin leaving. Not many. Just a few at first, young men mostly heading north, hoping to find work on the building sites or temples still getting grain allocations. They take their families if they can. Others go alone. No one says goodbye. You think about leaving, but where would you go? This is your home, your hearth, your children's only known world. So you stay, and you watch the village change. The animals go quiet. The goats bleat less. The chickens stop laying. Even the insects seem to hum more softly, as if they know loud sounds might draw unwanted attention. You adjust your chores. You work slower to save energy. You dry more leaves. Grind more strange roots. You stretch beer with old bread, mash it thinner, let it ferment longer. Sometimes the children cry from hunger. You sing to them then. Old lullabies. Soft ones. About Ra sailing the sky, about Isis finding Osiris, about the stars watching over good children. It doesn't stop the hunger, but it gives them something else to think about. You don't cry. Not often. But one morning, when the last of your grain disappears into the cooking pot, and you know there's nothing left for tomorrow, you step outside, walk to the edge of the canal, and sit in the dust. You look out over the dry fields, your tunic clinging to your ribs. You don't scream. You just let the wind pass through you. You don't even notice your daughter has followed you until her small hand slips into yours. She doesn't say anything. You don't either. That night, your husband returns with a half sack of barley. You don't ask where it came from. You just cook. You add wild herbs for flavor. A little honey scraped from the side of an old jar. You stir slowly, humming that same lullaby. Everyone eats in silence. The children fall asleep full for the first time in a week. You and your husband sit in the doorway afterward, sharing a crust of bread in the dark. And for a moment, there's peace. Not plenty, not comfort, just peace. The next morning, the wind changes. It smells like river. Not much, just a hint. You don't believe it at first, but the children smell it too. And later that day, when you walk back to the edge of the canal, you see it, a thin line of water, coming back, not rushing, not triumphant, but moving. The flood is coming late. Too late for some, but not for you. Not yet. You return home. You tell your husband. He doesn't smile, but he nods. You sleep that night, not with a full belly, but with something else. A reason to wake up tomorrow. When the water returns, it's not with cheers or fanfare. It's quiet. A gentle seep, at first, like someone whispering, promises to the earth. You're at the edge of the canal, watching scarlet sand steal space from the water. And then softly, unmistakably, you hear the trickle. A hiss as mud surrenders to flow, a green flash of weeds, stirring, and just like that, life slipping back into the land. You stay rooted. Your heart pounds. Not from exertion, but from relief, a quiet thunderstorm inside your chest. The village shifts. It doesn't erupt in celebration. Instead, people step outside, pause, and breathe. The air tastes cooler. The dust settles. It's like the world remembered itself. You reach out, touch the water. It's cold. It's alive. Tiny fish dart in the shallow current. Frogs peep overhead. A duck glides past, dragging a wake in the slow swell. Your husband joins you. He doesn't smile, but he doesn't look away either. He kneels, lifts a handful of mud-tinged water, and lets it drip between his fingers. He's silent. But the way his chest rises and falls, that's all you need. Weeping for others may already be over, but this day holds its own kind of water, quiet, sacred, necessary. The fields are alive again. Emerge green shoots ripple in the shallows. You know soon the seeds will push up. Soon life will puff through the clay. Your neighbors share looks. A slow, collective nod. The flood has come. Not in time, not in force, but in enough. You walk back to the courtyard. The heat has softened. Shadows deepen. The smell of damp mud and barley sprouts rises through the air. You breathe in and breathe out. You begin the slow work mending nets torn by drought-patching cloth, unraveled by dust-refilling jars washed by the canal's edge. You salvage everything you can. Nothing will go wasted now that water's come back not yet anyway. You knead dough with new flour still tinged with silt. The beer ferments sweeter, softer. Even the bread smells fuller, richer. You notice tiny shifts your daughter's laugh when she dips her finger into the rising yeast, your son's steady grip when he helps stir. Days stretch on. The Nile grows slowly, inch by patient inch. The crocodile returns on its own terms. The birds come back, wing beats fluttering overhead, calling out like prayers. Insects hum differently, less dusty. Families gather. They trade labor again. Women weave together. Outside men dip oxen into the canals to plow. Children chase through puddles. Life pulses again. They say drought shapes character. That suffering breeds strength. You're not sure it's true, but you know this. You survived. You guarded your grain. You stood in the dust when the world turned against you and returned when mercy came late. Your daughter offers you a handful of new clay flowers made from mud near the canal, fresh red with silt, scented with promise. You tuck them behind her ear gently. She grins. That evening, you share dinner with your husband as the light softens, painting the courtyard gold. The stew is simple fish, vegetables, grain, but it tastes like triumph. The lullaby you sing under your breath tonight is softer, the rhythm gentler. You cradle your daughter, your son nestled beside you, and breathe. The flood won't last forever. It never does. But tonight, your hearth holds warmth, your family holds full bellies, and the river holds life again. Tomorrow will come with work, with heat, with dust, with the same demands that shaped your life. But for this one brief night, the world has tilted away from collapse, and you live. Because sometimes survival is happening. And tonight you are surviving beautifully. You wake in the dark, heart pounding. There's no sound. Just the weight of silence pressing down on you, thick as clay. Your hand flies instinctively to your belly, flat now, then to your side. Your daughter's warm breathing evenly. Your son, too, curled against your back. But still, the sense lingers. Something is wrong. You rise, wrapping your shawl around your shoulders. The night air is cool, damp from the recently returned floodwaters. You walk to the door, step out into the courtyard. There's no cry. No shadow moving across the rooftops. Just the stars. Still the feeling remains. And that's when you know. Something inside you has changed. You're pregnant again. You don't need signs or omens or even the late periods you no longer count. You feel it. The same ache behind your ribs. The same nausea that now arrives with the scent of garlic. The same tightness in your lower back after a full day of work. You say nothing. Not yet. You go about your chores, grinding, baking, weaving, scrubbing, lifting, but slower. Your muscles remember. Your bones, too. You chew the mint leaves before the sickness catches your throat. Press cool cloths to your forehead when the sun grows too sharp. Your husband notices eventually. He doesn't say much. Just grunts one night. Again, you nod. He shrugs. The gods provide. You think sometimes that the gods provide mostly pain. The other women whisper, nod, offer you charms. Your mother gives you an old amulet shaped like a scarab. For strength, she says. Your aunt crushes herbs into powder bitter, but helpful, she promises. You wear both, because at this point, why not? This time it's harder. You're older now, if older can mean 21. But your joints ache sooner. Your balance is off. Your stomach tightens earlier. The heat affects you more. The smells, gods, the smells make you dizzy. You throw up 3 times in one day. The 4th time, you black out briefly. And still, you work. You cook with shaking hands. You scrub while leaning on your knee. You cradle your younger child while another one grows inside you. The others help your daughter, almost 6, now brings water without being asked. Your son sings to your belly at night. You don't sleep much. Some nights, the fear is louder than the nausea. You remember what happened to your grandmother, your cousin, the woman down the road who died after bleeding out in the bathhouse. You remember how fast things can change, how the line between life and death is thinner than linen. The midwife comes early this time, checks your breath, your belly, your pulse. You'll need help, she says. More than last time. You nod. You're too tired to argue. The final weeks stretch like melted wax, slow, warm, never-ending. Your feet swell. Your legs cramp. You can barely kneel. You sit more. Breathe more. Let others lift. Your husband doesn't complain. He helps more now. Quietly. When labor starts, it's different. Sharper. Lower. Like your body wants to turn itself inside out. The pain doesn't build, it crashes. The midwife comes. The neighbors too. Your mother, your aunt, your daughter watching from the doorway, wide-eyed. You tell her it's okay. You lie. You scream. Not a whisper this time. You grip the mat so hard your knuckles crack. You bleed faster. More. The midwife looks worried, but doesn't speak it aloud. You push, and push, and cry, and push. The room tilts. The world narrows. And then another cry. Smaller. Softer. You don't hear it at first. You only feel the pressure ease. Then the warmth on your chest. A daughter. You hold her with shaking arms, tears already drying on your cheeks. But the pain isn't over. The midwife is frowning. You look down. And then another pain. No, not afterbirth. Not yet. Another push. Another cry. A second baby. Twins. You laugh. A broken, exhausted, astonished laugh. The room erupts in motion. Herbs, cloths, prayers, water. 2 babies. 2 cries. 2 weights on your chest. But your body is done. The blood keeps coming. Too much. You fade. Not fully. Just far enough to see the worry in their faces without understanding the words. You wake hours later, cold, wrapped in every blanket they own, smelling of sweat blood and old lavender. The twins sleep beside you. You are still here. Barely. But still. They name the twins Nebet and Neferu. Lady and Beauty. Not because they look noble, honestly, they're wrinkled and squalling like overcooked raisins, but because names shape fate. You name for hope, not accuracy. The days that follow blur. You sleep in fragments an hour here, half there suspended between the edge of waking and the tugs of small mouths at your breast. You bleed still. Not dangerously, but steadily. You're pale. Your hands shake. Your mother tells you not to move. You move anyway. There is no maternity leave. You rise before you're ready. There are other children. There is bread to bake, floors to sweep. Your daughter brings water. Your son collects reeds. The house runs like a wheel you must spin, even as your limbs resist. The babies feed constantly. One sleeps while the other wakes. And they always seem to sense when you've just closed your eyes. Your nipples crack. You bite your lip until you taste blood. Your back stiffens into a permanent curve. The babies wriggle like worms. Kick squall dream of milk, and only milk. Your nights are filled with the sound of two small humans trying to scream their way back into your womb. Some women use wet nurses, you've heard, but you're not rich. You are the nurse. You are the food. You are the warmth, the comfort, the pillow, the blanket, the music, and the clock. You stop tracking time by days. You start tracking it by feedings. Morning, noon, dusk, midnight, and that cursed hour when all the other children sleep and the twins decide it's time to exercise their lungs. Your body is no longer yours. It belongs to need. Your hair is matted. Your hands are swollen. Your skin smells like sour milk and smoke. But your babies grow. They grip your fingers now. They focus their eyes. They laugh tiny, hiccuped bubbles of sound that make your ribs ache. Your daughter is suddenly 10. She sweeps without being asked, sings to the twins when they scream, tells stories about crocodiles who wear necklaces and riverfish who grant wishes. Your son collects smooth stones for their cradles. You watch him frown seriously at a pebble, decide it's unworthy, and toss it aside. You know hunger. You've tasted famine. This is a different kind of emptiness, an exhaustion that seeps into your bones and builds a home there. But you are needed, and so you wake. You feed. You work. You soothe. You begin teaching again, too. Small things. What a bee sounds like. What basil smells like. What happens if you touch the hot edge of a pot pane in a sharp scolding. Your twins babble nonsense, but they listen. You see it in their wide eyes. One day, you catch your reflection in the water pot. You barely recognize her. You see new lines. A sharpness in your cheekbones. A tightness in your jaw. You used to smile more. But then Neferu gurgles. Nebbit reaches for your hair, and you smile again, not because you remembered how, but because they pulled it out of you. Your husband is present, not warm, not cruel. He carries more firewood now, watches the twins, speaks more often, though never long. Sometimes he brings you a fig, once a tiny jug of sweet beer warm from being tucked under his arm. You drink it slowly. That night, you sleep 4 hours straight. He doesn't touch you much anymore. You suspect he's tired too. Or maybe respectful. Or maybe just distracted by the weight of life. You're not sure, and you don't ask. Sometimes he watches you feed the twins and says, "You're strong." It's not romance, but it's something. The midwife visits, says you've healed well, tells you a story about a woman who gave birth to triplets once. You laugh so hard you nearly cry. The village is quiet again. The Nile is steady. The grain grows. You dry herbs for later. You patch old tunics. You mend shoes. You make a toy from a gourd that makes the twins shriek with joy when it rattles. This is what motherhood looks like now. Not glory, not gold, but grit. You carry it in your shoulders, your hips, your cracking knees. And in the eyes of 4 small people who think the sun rises because you tell it to, maybe in a way it does. Your eldest daughter is nearly 12 when she starts her monthly bleeding. You find the stains on her linen shift while she's out playing with the neighbor girls awkwardly trying to spin a hoop made of bundled reeds. You sit down, breathe once, then call her inside. She's nervous, but not afraid. You've prepared her. In whispers, in stories, in jokes disguised as warnings. You hand her a cloth, fold it with care, show her again how to wash and dry it in the sun. You say softly, "You're becoming a woman now. She groans. That sounds terrible. You grin. It is. That night, she eats 3 helpings of lentil stew and announces she's never getting married. You smile. You don't correct her. But you both know the village is watching. Girls marry young here. You were younger than her when your betrothal was sealed. And while you want her to stay small forever to keep chasing dragonflies and naming goats after gods, you also know she won't. Your husband has already received 2 inquiries. You argued softly. She's not ready. He didn't disagree, but he didn't say no. You tighten your grip on time. Try to teach her everything at once. How to grind grain without losing fingers. How to knead dough just enough. How to recognize spoiled beer. How to read a name scratched on a potsherd. Some days she listens. Other days she huffs and runs off, sandals slapping against the stones. You let her go. You remember being her. Your son is different, quieter, more serious. He watches how his father ties knots, how he mends the roof. He asks questions you can't always answer. Why do we give half our grain to the temple? Why do crocodiles never blink? You answer the best you can. For the rest, you say, ask your father. Or when you're feeling bold, ask the gods. The twins are toddling now. One of them, Nebbit, has developed a habit of smuggling clay pebbles into her mouth. You check her tongue twice a day. Neferu prefers mischief-tugging tunics, toppling water jars, escaping at a run toward the neighbor's pig pen. You're always chasing someone, always rescuing something. And yet you feel time narrowing. You hear it in your knees, in the way your hips ache at night. You've had 4 children now. You're not old, but you're no longer new. The midwife says your womb might be done. You don't know whether to feel relief or grief. Your husband ages too. His shoulders slope more. His steps slow. He naps more often. Sometimes he talks about his past, the wife before you, the days before famine, the years before the temple took so much. You listen. You don't judge. You're both shaped by the same river after all. Work continues. Life continues. You teach your daughter how to braid rushes into mats. She rolls her eyes. We have enough mats. You raise an eyebrow. We always need more mats. She sighs, but finishes the braid. At market, you sell old pottery you mended and buy salt. You trade fish for herbs, linen for thread. You bargain harder now. You're known here, not feared, but respected. That's its own kind of power. One morning, the temple sends word a festival is coming, a feast for Hathor. There will be music, dancing, wine. You remember festivals, how they smelled of perfume and smoke, how the children laughed when painted dancers spun like windswept leaves. You decide to go. You bathe everyone, scrub dirt from ears, braid your daughter's hair, dust your tunic with crushed lotus petals. You find a necklace, your grandmother's blue beads now worn thin, and tie it carefully. You walk to the temple at sunset. Torches flicker. Music floats in the air. Drums throb like heartbeats. Someone is singing. Someone else is laughing. Your children scatter into the crowd. You dance just a little. You laugh just enough. For one night, no one is grinding. No one is sweeping. No one is measuring out lentils by the handful. Just dancing. Just joy. Just a moment. Later, as you carry one sleeping twin and shepherd the rest home, your eldest daughter says quietly, I want to learn to write like the priests. You pause, then smile. Then you'll learn. Because even here, even now, life finds space to grow. The scribe agrees to teach her. He's older, slow-moving, with ink-stained fingers, and a voice like sand across limestone. No one really knows where he came from. Some say he was a temple student who wandered off, Others say he simply appeared one day like a palm seed on the wind. What matters is that he can write, and that he agrees to let your daughter watch. Only watch at first. He sets her in the corner of his little reed-shaded room and tells her she can observe until she understands the rhythm of language. She doesn't complain. She sits hands folded, eyes wide. You pretend not to watch her when she leaves in the mornings. Tunic tied neatly scrolls under one arm, dust puffing beneath her sandals. You pretend not to hover by the courtyard wall around the time she returns. You definitely pretend not to cry the first time she brings home a scrap of papyrus with her name written perfectly, each letter curved like a wave, each stroke full of pride. It's not common, you know. Girls don't usually study this. Some whisper, it's not her place. What if she learns more than she should? What if she writes something dangerous? You ignore them. Let them whisper. You've survived hunger, birth flood and flame. You can survive gossip. Your daughter, meanwhile, soaks up knowledge like water into clay. She asks questions now. Big ones. Why do we pray to Hathor but give our grain to Osiris? Why don't women get to write the temple records? What happens if I write my own name wrong? Will the gods think I'm someone else? You answer what you can. For the rest, you listen. She's thinking. She's learning. She's burning brighter than the sun some days. Your son begins training in the fields with his father. He carries water now, drives the oxen slowly, sometimes forgets the names of the gods of the canals, but never the feel of the soil between his toes. He doesn't love it, but he does it well. You see the difference between them. Not in worth, in shape. He builds. She questions. The twins, of course, are chaos. Nebbet likes to climb things. Stairs, walls, goats. Neferu likes to dismantle things. Baskets, dolls, patience. Together, they form a whirlwind of sand and noise and questions you don't have answers to. You're tired. Not just today. Tired. Deep tired. The kind that sits in your spine like a coiled snake and waits for quiet moments to bite. Some mornings, your knees barely bend. Some nights, your hands curl into claws from grinding and sewing. You massage your own shoulders with clay ointment and pretend it works. You find gray in your hair. You pluck it, then stop plucking. What's the point? You think sometimes about your own mother. How young she was when you thought she was old. How strong she was, even in her silence. You wonder if your daughter sees you that way yet. One day, you visit the scribe yourself. Not to learn, though part of you still wishes you could. Just to talk. You bring bread. He offers honey. You sit in the shade and speak softly while the ink dries on his scrolls. He tells you your daughter could become a temple writer if she wanted. If she survives the politics. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. Even the gods have paperwork. You laugh harder than you have in weeks. He gives you a gift before you leave. A tiny shard of pottery smoothed and warm from the sun. On it a single word, Hemet. Wife, woman, keeper. It's not your name, but it's what you are. You tuck it into the folds of your tunic. At home, your husband watches the twins with a look that's half pride, half exhaustion. You hand him the shard. He squints at it. She wrote that he asks. No, you say. Someone else. But she could have. He nods. That night the stars are bright. The twins sleep. Your daughter copies symbols by candlelight. Your son mends his sandals. Your husband dozes by the hearth. You sit the word Hemet heavy in your lap. Not a title. A truth. A life lived. One morning, while grinding barley in the sun, your fingers seize. Not all at once. First, it's just your thumb, stiff stubborn. Then your wrist, aching like it's remembering something painful. By noon, your entire arm feels like it's made of sun-baked mud. You try to shake it off. You dunk your hands in a water jar, mutter to the gods. Flex your fingers, keep going. But the pain lingers. At first, you hide it. You've done this dance before. Pain in your joints, in your back, in your jaw, when you chew too hard. You've blamed age, the weather, bad sleep. But this doesn't pass. You are 31, and your body is older than your years. The priest once called this the curse of the hands that feed. You call it life. You ask your daughter to finish the grinding. She does without complaint. You realize too late how strong she's grown, how calloused her hands are, how straight her spine is when she kneels. Later, you sit beneath the date tree near the edge of the courtyard, watching the twins make mud pyramids, and your son repair a broken stool. You're no longer the center of everything, not because you've stopped being needed, but because they've started becoming. You don't know how to feel about that. Your husband joins you. He sits slowly now the way men do when their knees start arguing. He brings a piece of dried fig and splits it in half. You chew in silence, not because there's nothing to say, but because this is what partnership looks like after years of floods, fires, children, and silence. You show him your hand. He frowns. Rest, he says. You laugh. When that night you light a lamp and take out the old clay Shabti, a burial figure you carved years ago when your first child was born. It's small, shaped like a servant, with crossed arms meant to do your work in the afterlife. You hold it gently. It doesn't look like you, but maybe someday it will. Your daughter finds you like this. Why do we make these, she asks. You shrug. So we can rest in death, even if we never did in life. She blinks. That's a terrible system. You laugh. Yes. Yes, it is. The next morning your son brings you a smooth stone. For your hands, he says. Cool it in the basin first. You don't cry, but your heart swells, not with pride, with something older, something softer. Time moves differently now. You aren't old, but you're no longer new. You sleep more deeply. You eat more slowly. You dream more often. Sometimes of your mother, sometimes of water, sometimes of nothing at all. And still you wake, because there's bread to make, children to guide, a husband who still needs reminders to cover the grain. But your hands don't grind anymore. Your daughter does that now. And she sings while she works. There's a death in the village. An old woman, older than memory it seems. She lived near the fields under a reed roof that sagged with the weight of time. Some say she'd once been a priestess. Others say she used to know how to talk to crocodiles. Most just called her Teta, which means grandmother, even if they weren't related. Your daughter helps prepare the body. She washes the skin with warm water oils, the hair with sesame. She places a carved amulet, an ujjat eye on the chest, presses resin-soaked linen around the limbs, seals the mouth with mud and prayers. You watch her move, graceful, focused, like she's done this 100 times. You want to be proud. You also want to weep. She's becoming the kind of woman others trust with their dead. She understands reverence ritual decay. That's no small thing. The funeral procession winds past your home. Papyrus flutes trill low and off-key. The mourners sing a hymn about safe travel, about being ferried across the waters to the field of reeds. Your son walks beside the bier, holding a clay jar of barley beer. Symbolic, precious. Death here isn't loud. It's layered. Later, they bury Tita near the canal mouth beside her sister. The tomb is shallow. There's not much left to give some bread, a painted bead necklace, a folded tunic. But there are tears. Real ones. That night, the twins ask where Tita went. You say, to a garden. They blink. You add with shade, and fish, and no fleas. They seem satisfied. You lie awake long after, not afraid, just aware. Your body hurts most days now. Knees stiff, hips locked, hands curled like question marks. You no longer grind cook or carry full jars. But you are not idle. You direct. You remind. You whisper knowledge into ears small enough to still listen. You teach Neferu how to braid linen without it fraying. You teach Nibet how to speak so people actually hear. You show your son how to spot spoiled grain and how to ask for help without sounding weak. You tell your daughter, now nearly grown, that softness is not a flaw, that silence can be strategic, and that knowing when to stop speaking is often wiser than shouting. She listens, and sometimes she disagrees. You love that. The seasons change. The Nile floods again strong this time. The fields sing green. There's more bread than you need, more figs than you can dry. For once, you eat until you're full. More than once. A festival comes again. Your daughter wears the blue beads. She dances in a circle of girls, their arms painted with henna, their feet dusted with chalk. You sit in the shade watching. Not moving much. Just watching. A neighbor leans over and says, "That one will be priestess one day." You nod. Later, your daughter sits beside you and says she's been asked to help write temple records. Not full training, but a trial. A start. You kiss her forehead. You press a charm into her hand, Bess again worn smooth. For protection, you say. She smiles. You already gave me that, a long time ago. You watch her walk away, shoulders straight, scrolls under her arm, and for the first time in years, you feel the urge to sleep deeply. To let the house keep turning without your hands. The sun feels different on your skin now. Not weaker, never that, but softer. Less like fire, more like light. Your bones still ache, your hands still curl, but there's a gentleness to the mornings you never noticed before. The village hums around you. Children run through the dust, shouting nonsense songs. Oxen grunt from the fields. Someone is baking, maybe your niece, because the smell of sesame bread floats in on the breeze. You breathe it in. You sit more often now. On the same stone bench you've used for years, smoothed by your weight, warmed by 1,000 afternoons. You don't weave anymore. Don't wash pots or chase twins through puddles. You've earned your stillness. Your son is grown, taller than his father. He takes charge of the fields, now guides the oxen with a steady hand. He has your father's shoulders, your husband's eyes, your stubborn will. He smiles more than either of them ever did. You taught him that. The twins are nearly 12. They argue like priests and thieves. One wants to marry a reed cutter. The other insists she'll live in a boat and sell perfume. You let them dream. You know what life will take from them. But you don't rush the taking. And your daughter? Your daughter writes in ink now, real ink, on real papyrus. Her hands steady her lines straight. She works in the outer temple, translating harvest records and prayer requests from villagers too shy to speak directly to the gods. Sometimes she comes home with her hands stained black and red. You kiss them anyway. She's not married. Not yet. Suitors come, of course, but she's in no hurry. She says there's work to do first. You never said those words aloud, but you think you lived them anyway. One morning, the priest visits, not for blessings, but for questions. He asks if you remember when the last great flood came early. You do. He nods. He listens. He writes it down. You tell him stories, names long gone, plots of land now underwater. He thanks you. You realize then that you have become something else, not just a wife, not just a mother. You are memory. And in this place that matters, your daughter brings you a new tunic linen dyed pale blue. She helps you into it like you helped her into her first belt. You both pretend your joints don't creak. She braids your hair. You let her. Outside, the temple bells ring. A holy day. People gather. Not for you, but you are part of the crowd. No longer rushing. No longer leading. Just witnessing. A woman places a papyrus bundle at your feet. For your story, she says. You don't recognize her. Maybe she's one of the girls you once taught to bake. Maybe she just heard about you. You accept it. You open it that evening. It's a prayer, written in your daughter's hand. It ends simply, "She gave us the river even in drought." You close your eyes, not to sleep, just to rest. The house doesn't fall apart. The world doesn't stop, because you've built something stronger than hands. You've raised a village. You've left a name, not carved in stone, but breathed daily in those who remain. The stars are high now, veiled faintly by clouds of river mist. The night is warm, not hot, not biting, just warm enough to hold your body gently as it settles. You lie on your mat bones, sighing into stillness, breath quiet. Around you, the world has slowed. The twins have stopped bickering. Your son sleeps with one arm flung across his face. Your daughter's scrolls are tucked away. Her lamp glows low. You think of the Nile, endless, eternal, yet always moving. You were a part of that. The silt of your life fed something. The long days, the cracked heels, the laughter, the silence, the loss, the joy. They folded into the current and became memory. Not the kind carved on tomb walls. The kind passed from hand to hand, mat to mat, as dough is kneaded, as prayers are spoken. There's no fear now, only softness. The earth cradles you. The air whispers over your cheeks. Somewhere a frog croaks once, then falls quiet. This is rest, true rest. Your story doesn't end here. It flows on. In every pot your children shape. In every hymn they hum while stirring lentils. In the way your name is spoken, not loudly, not formally, but with reverence and familiarity, as if it's always been part of the soil. So now let your breath slow. Let your body soften. Let the night hold you, because you too have returned to the river, and the river never forgets.